Hello and good morning and welcome to the English box. The topic for today is conditionals. So what is a conditional and how do we form a conditional sentence? A conditional consists of a condition and a result. The condition is expressed in the if clause, the first half of the sentence, and the result is expressed in the main clause, the second half of the sentence. On the whiteboard in front of you, you can see an example of a first conditional, an example of a second conditional, and an example of a third conditional. So the first conditional is, if you study hard, you will pass the exam. The second conditional is, if you studied hard, you would pass the exam. And the third conditional is, if you had studied hard, you would have passed the exam. Here you can see some differences in the structure. But what do these differences mean? And what do these different conditionals express? If we move on to the next slide, we can see the first conditional sentence again with an explanation of the structure of the sentence. So the first conditional is used to express the probable or likely result of a future action. So let's look at the example again. If you study hard, you will pass the exam. This means that if you work, if you look in your books and you study and learn every night in the week before the exam, then you will pass the exam. It's a probable occurrence. You're an intelligent person, you've always done well in exams, and as long as you study, you will pass. You are going to pass the exam. So you have the if clause, if you study hard. This is if plus the subject, you, plus the verb, study, plus any other complement. And then this is followed by the main clause, which begins with the subject, you, and then we have will or going to, and then the infinitive. So you'll see the if clause is in present simple and the main clause in future simple. The next slide shows us the second conditional. The second conditional is used to express the probable result of our hypothetical or impossible, perhaps, occurrence or action. To explain this further, we have the sentence, the second example sentence, if you studied hard, you would pass the exam. So perhaps you're a little bit lazy, you don't do very much work, school isn't very important for you, and so you don't study very much. But you're quite intelligent. If you did study, if you studied, you would pass the exam. But this isn't a real situation. The real situation is expressed with the first conditional. The unreal situation is expressed with the second conditional. If we look at the structure, we have the if clause. This is if plus the subject plus the verb in the past tense. Could be past simple or past continuous. So if you studied. And then we have the main clause, and this is the subject, followed by would, and followed by the verb in infinitive. So that's the second conditional. Now let's look at the third conditional. A similar example sentence again. If you had studied hard, you would have passed the exam. Now, this third conditional expresses the result of a hypothetical situation or an unreal situation, something that didn't happen in the past, and the result that would have happened if this action had taken place. So if you had studied hard, you would have passed the exam. You had an exam last week, for example, and you were very, very lazy. You didn't do any work, and for this reason, you didn't pass the exam. Now, normally, if you worked a lot, again, you're very intelligent. If you worked a lot, then you would pass the exam. But this time, a week ago, you were lazy, you didn't do any work, and so you didn't pass the exam. But if you had studied hard, you would have passed the exam. So let's look at the structure, the if clause. If you had studied, if plus the subject plus had plus the verb in past participle, followed by the main clause, you would have passed, the subject plus would have plus the verb in past participle. So that is the third conditional. That brings us to the end of this short video about the structure of the conditionals. I decided that one video was too short to include all the different aspects I wanted to talk about with regard to conditionals. So we're going to make some more videos on mixed conditionals, advanced conditionals. This means different structures that can be used when saying or using conditionals. Conditionals with modal verbs, and a video with exercises on conditionals and conditionals with imperatives as well, and which we will discuss the structure in more detail. So look out for those. Just to finish, if you'd like to have access to more videos and join in live lectures, so live lessons on a weekly basis, then come and register at Englishbox. And we look forward to talking to you. So, thank you and goodbye.